What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Minding Hours podcast, presented by Project Superhero Fit. I'm your host, Coach John. I'm joined by Coach Crystal. Come with us on this transformative journey in which we seek that fitness is inside out. It makes no sense to have a beautiful physique, but an ugly mind, heart, and spirit. Thank you for subscribing and joining each episode. Now let's get into this conversation. Man, so welcome back, guys. Welcome back to the Minding Hours podcast. First and foremost, let me say this and let me get this out of the way. It feels good to be back. We have taken a long hiatus for different reasons. A lot has changed with Project Superhero Fit. A lot has changed with Coach John. A lot has changed with Coach Crystal. And most importantly, a lot has changed with Seneca, right? As if you follow us on our social platforms, as you all can see, we are in the middle of a thriving volleyball season for Seneca. Very intense. She's playing at a high level. The team is playing high competition at a high level. So it's very exciting, very fun, and it's been a great journey, and to see her thrive and to see her excel, we couldn't be more proud as parents. So, but we'll catch up in another episode, and we'll catch up some other time. We have a lot to unpack in this episode. This episode and the topic that we are going to discuss is very near and dear to me as a coach, being a former high-level performing youth basketball player, playing at a high level, playing at a high competitive level in AAU, travel ball, high school, things of that nature, also in college as well. This topic is very, very, very personal, comes speaking from the heart, from experience, and also being a youth coach and a youth parent currently. This topic is very, very, very near and dear to us as a family, and I'm very passionate about it. So, first and foremost, we want to talk about a village, right? Growing up when, I grew up, being an 80s baby and kind of growing up in the 90s and the early 2000s and things like that. Back when we were playing sports was more than just sports, right? You had coaches, you had mentors, you had parents, you had teachers. It seemed like everybody worked together, not only to help us as kids become better athletes, but first and foremost, life lessons, right? They helped us and they molded us into giving us fundamental values and morals and standards of what being a human was. A good human being through sports, right? So kind of basically molding us and giving us a foundation of life through the adversity and through the issues and things and the ups and downs and the emotions of sports, right? But somewhere along that way, even in today's time, youth sports has changed drastically, right? And honestly, I don't think it's change in a good way. Yes, there are some things that that there's a difference in skill level. There's a difference in technique and analytics and how skill is taught and the X's and O's are taught, and I think that has advanced and evolved tremendously. But I think the village is somewhat I can say somewhat, but mostly non-existent. All right, and I think that it's affected youth sports big time. So before we, dive into the topic, just a little bit of a backstory. A lot of this what we're going to talk about, and a lot of the views and the perspectives that I'm going to discuss come straight from experience of playing in my youth, and also now being a youth coach, and also now being on the parent side. So I always tell the kids, listen to those that have done it before. So yes, we've been there, not too long ago, we were youth athletes. Now we're youth coaches, and now we're parents. So this topic is near and dear to us, like I said, and near and dear to me as well. So this is coming straight from the heart and straight from experience. I'll be honest, when I first thought about, coaching the youth, especially coaching basketball, yes, it was for, the love of the game. It was for, kind of filling my cup up a little bit more from, the joy and it being over for me as a player. So yes, initially, when I first thought about, coaching or helping out with any type of basketball environment or things like that, it was kind of a personal thing and wanting to still be attached to the game. But once we started our business, Project Superhero Fit, and working with the youth and actually, becoming a strength and conditioning coach, and kind of tapping into the mindset of, the youth when it comes to working out, when it comes to how they should approach their routine and, just building habits, it was evident that the village is severely missing in today's time. Parents are seeking certain things. Kids don't have certain expectations of themselves and things like that. And coaches also as well. Coaches, aren't really establishing clear expectations and standards anymore because their values aren't aligning with the parents or the athlete and things like that. So, my mission and my purpose as a coach shifted from it being personal to what can I do to help bridge the gap of the village or play my role in the village as a coach. There's many different factors of, why youth sports, is suffering in today's time. But, honestly, it's alignment. What it comes down to is, what the standard and expectation of becoming a good human being and what the foundation is shifted so much across coaches, across parents, across athletes. There's no alignment as far as what the village needs to align on, the so-called village needs to align on to make our youth athletes better human beings first before, becoming better athletes. When we were young, it became a thing where when you played a sport, you knew that someone in your circle or someone around you was going to hold you accountable. I remember the coaches, not the ones that, were necessarily the X's and O's coaches and things like that, or the coaches that were showing me the best drills and the best ways to, dunk a basketball and things like that, or become better at my craft. I remember the coaches the most that, wanted to help me be a better young man. I remember the coaches that were tough on me. I remember the coaches that told me the truth. I remember the coaches that, would say, hey, I'm going to call your mom and dad, if you, aren't, doing what you need to do in practice or if you're goofing off. Those are the coaches that I remember the most. And I think that those type of coaches are needed in today's time more than ever. The parents aligning their values with the coaches and what needs to be done rather than what they want, for themselves or what they want for, the investment rather than what their kid needs. I think that those things need to align now more than ever. So let's get into it, man. So today, again, we're going to be talking about the village, right? And if there's no village, guys, whether you're a club, whether you're a high school team, college team, professional team, whatever it may be, it does not matter. If there's no village, then there's no culture, right? And without culture, you're not going to have a championship legacy. You're not going to have a championship standard. You're not going to have a championship expectation, right? Dominance comes from an expectation. And if you want to dominate across the board, you have to have some type of village culture where everybody's on one accord and everybody's vision and mission aligns, right? So today, I'm going to be talking to three groups, right? I'm going to be talking to athletes, I'm going to be talking to coaches, and I'm going to be talking to, last but not least, parents. So, athletes, you're up first, okay? So, if you're an athlete listening to this, I need you to understand something very, very, very important, okay? After the age of 13, coaching and expectations for you, and depending on what the goal is for yourself and what you want out of this sport, the expectations for you change. Okay. And let me explain a little bit. Okay. So from the ages of 5 to 12, and maybe a little bit 13, okay, you're learning the fundamentals, you're having fun, you're being introduced to competition, and it's a good time, right? But once you hit the age of 14, and you're expected to develop, this is when you have to make a decision, okay? And what I mean by making a decision is, for instance, if you're say a football player, okay, are you going to be someone who plays football, or are you going to be a football player? If you're a volleyball, are you going to be someone at the age of 14 and beyond, right? Are you going to be someone who plays volleyball, or are you going to be a volleyball player? And when I say that, what I mean is that at the age of 14, the expectation and the development level and the development piece begins, all right? Depending on what goal you have in mind and depending on what expectation you have set for yourself, right? If the goal is to go to a high level, if the goal is to play, Division 1, Division 2, whatever have you, and then go on and to play beyond college in the pros, then the expectation of you and the expectations you have for yourself has to shift. Okay, it's at this point the development piece isn't meant to be comfortable, right? Yes, there's levels. Okay, there's certain levels to everything, and especially if you just want to continue to play for fun, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But if the goal is to compete at a high level and play at a high level, you have to understand that it's uncomfortable. All right. And what I mean by that is that the people in your village, right? Your coaches, your teachers, your parents, the adults in your village, it's not their job after the young age of 5 to 13. Once you hit 14, it's adults in your village. It's their job to help mold you into what you're going to face in life, right? It's their job to prepare you how to be disciplined. It's their job to prepare you and hold you accountable, to challenge you, to correct you, and to demand more of you than you expect from yourself. Because as an athlete, how do you know what the expectation level for yourself is if there's no bar set for who you need to be and who you're becoming, right? But the thing is, you as an athlete, you have to stop looking at tough coaching as punishment, right? Too often, youth athletes in today's time, you all look at tough coaching as punishment. It's not. It's really preparation, right? It's preparing you for the things that your coach expects from you. It's preparing you for the things that your parents are going to expect from you. It's preparing you for things that, helping you set a higher expectation for yourself going into this society, which has lowered its standard in many different areas. So when you receive, honest, hard coaching, as an athlete, you shouldn't look at it as, woe is me. This, that, and other, and take it negatively. I'll tell you a secret. When a coach stops believing in you, that's when they stop talking to you. But when a coach is hard on you and they push you, they see potential in you and they want more from you. So embrace tough coaching. Okay? Great players don't run from great coaching. They chase it, right? People look at the greats, Michael Jordan, Tom Brady, all of the greats. They didn't win until they had a coach that coached them and pushed them to the next level, right? If things are feeling comfortable, if things are, feeling easy, if you're not uncomfortable as an athlete, then you're probably not growing. So when a coach is giving you direct direction, that's all they're doing is giving you direct direction so you can understand which way to go. Because, at the tender age of 14, and, that's also a pivotal moment in your life as an athlete of finding your identity. So it's the village's job, parents, mentors, coaches, teachers, to help you find your direct identity as an athlete and a human being. So don't run from honest, hard, direct coaching from your coaches, from your teachers, or your parents. Athletes, I want to leave you with this and leave you with this challenge, okay? So when it comes to why and what you want out of this game, okay? What is your why? Okay, that's number one. What is your why? What is your purpose behind what you do? What is your purpose and what is your why behind why you play the sport that you play? All right. Number two, what do you expect the game or your sport to give back to you, or for you to get out of? Ultimately, what do you want to accomplish and what do you want out of the sport that you're playing? Okay, again, what is your expectation of what you want out of the sport that you're playing? All right. Number three. All right. What are the expectations of your village, right? What are the expectations of what you need or what you want from your parents, your coaches, your friend circle, anyone who influences who you're becoming as a human being and who you're becoming as an athlete? What is your expectation of your village and the people around you? All right. And then last but not least, number four. All right. What are you expecting to sacrifice for what you need to do to get to the level that you wish to reach and what you want out of this sport? Again, what are you expecting to sacrifice? All right. Simply to get what you need out of your expectation for the sport and what you want from the sport that you're playing. I challenge you to those four things. All right. All right. Now, coaches, okay, you guys are up next. All right. So, coach, to be honest with you, I understand, right? I understand that, you have great knowledge. I understand you have great X's and O's. I understand that you have a lot of experience, credentials, and all of the above, right? But I want to let you know something and let you know a little secret, okay? You are a part of a village that needs you more than ever in today's time, all right? I'll say that again. If you are a youth coach, you are a part of a village. Whether you realize it or not, you are a part of a village that needs you more than ever when it comes to your players, when it comes to your parents, when it comes to the culture of your team and your organization. Okay, we're far removed from the times where, you can just run drills, manage the rotations and the lineups, just win tournaments and things like that, right? Now we're filling the gaps that a lot of our youth athletes are missing at home, and that's being honest. Coming from experience, coming from working with many different youth athletes, still working with many different youth athletes and many different parents, from different backgrounds, from different dynamics, and whatever have you. But it's always been the same kind of consensus across the board, is that parents are signing their kids up to fill in some of the gaps that are missing from home. As a youth coach, we're now being tasked, with the job of, setting a discipline standard, setting a expectation, giving clarity through consequences and expectations, and raising the bar to help, athletes, from the age of 14 and beyond, to understand that, in order to be successful in life, there has to be a level of expectation and a bar set of direct direction of where you should go to accomplish the goals that you wish to accomplish. And yes, as a youth coach, we've been tasked to teach that through sports. So, as a coach, just like I just got finished speaking to the athletes, as a coach, it's going to be uncomfortable moments as well. It's going to be uncomfortable setting a standard with some parents. It's going to be uncomfortable setting a standard with some kids. It's going to be uncomfortable, handing out consequences to, your best player down to your worst player. It doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, consequences are necessary because they teach, it's a bigger picture to it than just punishment, right? Consequences for making mistakes. Yes, let them work through the first 2, maybe 3 mistakes, right? We don't want to strip confidence, but we have to help youth athletes understand that there's consequences behind the choices that they make, right? And just as little as, a shank ball or a missed free throw or a fumble in football, those mistakes can cost big time, in a clutch moment of a game. So why not help them in practice understand that, hey, that error, it should try to be avoided, through consequences. So those are the life lessons that we've been tasked as youth coaches to teach, so it's vital that as a coach, you understand that in order to build that championship culture that you want, in order to build that legacy and that dominance that you're looking for as a program or organization, the village has to be on board and has to be aligned with the expectation that you're setting. So not only dealing with the athlete, you have to deal with the parents as well, right? You have to set that standard across the board with all parents. Yes, youth sports has changed into a business in a sense because there is a big investment that is made, for the athletes, to go on trips and, travel and do whatever, is asked of the clubs and things like that. So yes, it has in sense, turned into a business. But if the goal is to develop and help the youth understand solution-based development through sports, then the village has to be aligned at home as well. So those conversations have to be had with parents as well, and that's across the board, because a standard can't be set when there's, picking and choosing of what athlete or what parent, needs to have this treatment and that treatment or whatever have you, right? It has to be set across the board, and that goes for all athletes and all parents. So it's really, really a crucial time in society where from the age of 14 and beyond, these youth athletes are very impressionable. They're very influenced by many different things. And as a coach, our purpose, or from experience, I can say my purpose is to help guide, the youth athlete and the parent in the direction and giving the foundation that the athlete needs to succeed later on in life. And, not based on what I want as a coach or based on sometimes what the parents want as parents, but what does the athlete and that parent need to grow in that moment, and the organization or the club need as well. So uncomfortable conversations, may have to be had as coaches as well. We're being tasked with shaping future adults, right? So sometimes that means being firm. It means being honest, and it means demanding more from the village as the athlete and the parent as well. A coach who never challenges the athletes or the parents aren't trying to develop the kid. And that's just being honest. A coach that never challenges the athlete or the parents aren't trying to develop and give direct direction to the kid. Right? So coaches, I challenge you, how do you want to be remembered as a coach? What do you want players to say about you, years later? Are you going to be one of those coaches where a player, succeeds later on in life, but always mentions your name? So what type of imprint are you leaving on the future for your athletes and your parents? That's the type of questions that you have to ask yourself. All right, now I want to talk to the parents, okay? So really quickly, parents, before, we continue and before I say anything, I say everything that we're going to discuss, I say it with love and I say it with all due respect. All right. Again, honest conversations are uncomfortable. All right. So some things that I'm probably going to say, some things that I'm going to talk about, you may find it uncomfortable and you may not agree with it. But guess what? Again, it's a village. All right. Villages should be able to come together and, talk about things and talk about, different views and different perspectives. So that's what I'm going to do. OK, so I don't want you all to, take anything personal that I say, and I say everything with all love and respect. OK, but listen, parents, you've got to stop treating youth sports like it's a purchase. All right. You buy things from Amazon, what your favorite retail store, whatever it may have you, okay? But parents, listen, you cannot purchase greatness. You cannot purchase your athlete becoming the GOAT, okay? All right, so just because you're paying club fees, travel calls, private lessons, and things like that, that does not mean that your child is guaranteed or it's all on the club or the coaches to make your child become this elite human being and this elite athlete, okay? Money does not produce greatness. Yes, it's a great resource to have, private lessons and extra work on your child's craft. I'm not saying that that's not beneficial. All right. But greatness comes from discipline. It comes from coaching. It comes from accountability. It comes from expectations. It comes from clarity of expectations. It comes from direct direction, repetition, and sacrifice. All right. Again, those things that I just said don't cost money. All right. Everything that I just said greatness comes from does not cost money. All right. Parents, analyze your village. Okay. Analyze what you want from your village. All right. Your youth coach of your child is a part of your village. All right. Does the values and the morals and standards for what you want or what your child needs, does it align with your coach? What is your expectation, okay, as a parent when it comes to what your child is learning from this season or playing sports, right? Is your expectation of what is going on with your child what you wanted as a kid, as an athlete? Or are you expecting them to develop in their own path? Right? Is the expectation for the development of your child into this great athlete and great human being, is your expectation of it to be easy? Do you expect your child to learn the things that you learned as a kid? Manners, discipline, kindness, respecting authority, respecting adults, not talking back, those type of things. Are you expecting your child to learn those things through sports and from the village that your child is in? If a coach is holding your child accountable, helping your child develop the right way, teaching standards, teaching life lessons, teaching Your child to fail forward, because failure is necessary for your child, and failure is, as you know, as an adult, failure is necessary as well. Are those things being reinforced at home? Because if they're not, if something different is being taught at home, guess what? The village is already broken, right? When a parent is not aligning, with the teachers, with the coaches, and with the necessary foundational pieces that the athletes and the children need to become who they're becoming, then we're already building a house from the roof down, and you can't do that because you won't have a foundation. Athletes and young adults need clarity and direct direction. And if there is no noticeable village alignment of what's expected and what the standard is, then there will be no clarity for the athletes, no clarity for the coaches, and no clarity for the parents, and absolutely no clarity for the culture of the village. Okay? So, as parents, right, I challenge you all to analyze your parenting. Analyze what values and morals and standards that you want or you're expecting from your child and expecting from the sport to teach your child. I'll say it again. As a parent, I want you to analyze your expectations of what your child playing sports is teaching your child about life. Because that's what this is about. All right. Again, private lessons and more reps, that is awesome. That is awesome. But that is not going to teach competitiveness. It's not going to teach discipline. It's not going to teach accountability. It's not going to teach effort. It's not going to teach expectations, sacrifice, and any of that. It's not going to teach any of that. All right. And just because you pay for the club doesn't mean that you're not supposed to help align those values, those morals, and those standards at home, along with your coaches and along with the village. So I want you to analyze that, and I want you to challenge yourself and look at yourself wholeheartedly in the mirror and ask, am I expecting those things from my coach, my child's coaches and the club and the organization, and me as a part of this village? So, now that we have talked about, all three groups, athletes, coaches, and parents, we talked to all three. So now let's kind of shift our focus and talk about the village philosophy. Back when I was playing, and I know what the village meant to me, right? And I know like great athletes and great human beings are built by villages. They're surrounded around people that are on one accord when it comes to like pushing them, when it comes to wanting more out of them, right? They they grew up in a village, that was on one accord. So it's like, parents are to reinforce the values. Coaches are there to push the values. Mentors are there to, keep the athlete or whoever it may be in line when the coaches and the parents aren't around. And then teammates as well. Teammates should demand excellence and be a part of that village as well, because at the end of the day, when you have an environment like that, you build leadership from top to bottom. And organizations and clubs, teams can be good, but teams and organizations they excel and leave legacy when there's leadership from top to bottom, from the coaches, the directors, the parents, and also the players. That type of environment builds resilience. Solution-based environment where athletes can use sports as a way to solve problems, like real life problems. Humility. That type of environment creates humility and toughness as well. Because honestly, how many youth athletes are going to become professional players? Just be honest. Not all of them. Not many, to be honest. But every athlete, through what they learn through sports, has the potential to become a pro human being or a successful human being or a successful adult. So sports should prepare athletes for that. And that's what a village brings to the table, especially when the village is on one accord. How do the athletes respond to failure? How do they lead? How do they work through adversity? How do they handle pressure? Those are the real values that youth sports were teaching us when we were young. So it's our job as coaches, parents, and even athletes today. It's our job to bring that village back that sets that tone and sets that standard. So over the years of, working with athletes and, kind of, understanding the mindset piece behind it and realizing that their habits and their routines and how they approach their way of thinking towards, the elite athlete that they want to become, I realized that, a lot of youth athletes aren't lacking talent. They're just lacking the framework of how to think. And the thing that they're missing the most is the village helping mold that mindset and that way of thinking. We were guided, from various different angles and various different influences in our lives to kind of think a certain way that will help us build that framework of how to think when it became, when it came to, becoming a successful athlete and becoming the human being that we needed to become. So, that's why I developed, for those of you who don't know, I have a mindset program that's 36 weeks called the Mindful Path to Greatness, right? To help athletes and to help not only the athlete, but to help the village understand, right? For parents, directors, coaches, athletes all across the board, the program is designed to, build that framework of how to think and create that elite culture of, the village of everybody becoming a development solution based, organization or sports program instead of just chasing the youth sports to what it's become today. And, kind of putting the values and the morals and standards and the expectations on the back burner and it just becoming business or kids just jumping from club to club. With that being said, before I close out this podcast and this episode, I'd be remiss if I didn't give a huge shout out to, number one, my village as a kid, right? Shout out to my parents, shout out to, my siblings, shout out to all my friends, teammates, everybody. Shout out to all my youth coaches that, help kind of mold my journey, mold my path, and give me the tools that I needed to become, the young man that I've become and the gentleman and the adult that I've become today. All of the coaches, many of you guys, I won't name any names because it's so many, but shout out to all of the parents as well that, allow me to work with their kids, from the beginning of this journey of Project Superhero into what it's become today, from my day one clients to the clients that I have now. Shout out to all you guys, because it's through experience and through lessons and through, life's journey of that's how you learn. Life is our biggest teacher. And, life is understood backwards, but you got to live it forward. So shout out to all of the learning experiences that I had as a coach and all of the parents that I built relationships with as well. Thank you guys so much for trusting Coach John to work with your youth athlete, right? And also super shout out to Winter Park Volleyball Club, for embracing the Mindful Path to Greatness this season. I'm thoroughly enjoying the progress that we've made thus far. Both on the boys side and the girls side of all divisions and all age groups. Looking excited and looking forward to the second half of the season and what's to come in the future. A huge shout out to Coach Aaron and Coach Shauna for presenting the opportunity for me, and also a huge shout out to what you guys are doing for our daughter and helping her join a prestigious club, the best club in Florida. And a platform to thrive. So a huge shout out to you guys and thank you guys for that. So again, guys, youth sports is not just about raising athletes, right? It's about raising strong human beings. Coaches are meant to push them and develop them. Parents, you're meant to align with the program and support the culture and expect the organization to help your child develop and grow in an uncomfortable manner, right? Athletes, right? Stop chasing comfort and start chasing growth, because the truth is that it still takes a village, and the best villages don't build champions on the scoreboard, but they build champions in life. All right, so I appreciate you guys, joining me. I appreciate you guys, listening in. If you haven't, like, comment, share, and subscribe. All right, and we'll see you on the next episode.